Okay. Numbers 16, starting in verse 6. This do take censers, Korah and all his company. Now, to give you a little background about the first 5 verses, Korah decided he didn't want to listen to Moses. He wanted to be in charge himself. He wanted to be priest when the Lord called Moses to be priest. So he's kind of started a rebellion here. So Moses went to the Lord about this, as we should when things come our way, and the Lord told him to do this. So this is what the Lord told Moses. Put fire in them and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow, and it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses, he shall be holy. You take too much upon you, you sons of Levi. At this point, he already chose Moses, the sons of Aaron, to be high priests. It's kind of, what this is kind of, they ain't taking Moses' word for it. So it's kind of the Lord saying, you're not called to do it. So he's showing, he ain't really second guessing himself by doing this. He's just getting their attention. Sometimes the Lord's got to get our attention, and this is how He's doing it to them, to show that they're not called to do that. They're not to go that way, not to pursue it, because that's not where they're going to excel in the Lord. And Moses said to Korah, Hear, I pray you, you sons of Levi. Does it seem but a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to Himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto them? And this was referring to the priests. God had a job for the Korah. And you see in Psalms it mentions son of Korah in some of them. Some of them became psalm writers, musicians. One of their duties was to be the gatekeepers. So they were to make sure that the only Jews that were clean would enter the temple grounds. They were also responsible for keeping people from going in places that were only reserved for the Levites. So their duty was very important. They were to keep the temple holy. This wasn't a job the sons of Aaron were supposed to do. Their simple thing was to be in charge of sacrifices. Does it seem but verse 10. And he has brought you near to him, and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you, and do you seek the priesthood also? They were wanting to dictate what God wanted for them. They were wanting more than what God had for them. There's some people that they keep wanting more. And while we should keep growing in God, we should be happy with where He has us. Being in the same spot doesn't mean our faith is dead. Sometimes He has us in the same spot for a long time. But there's still growth in that. From doing that, we grow closer to Him, even though we ain't really moving. Some people have to keep changing different things to get close and grow in faith, and some people He has to do that. Missionaries, usually some of them go from different places, don't stay in the same. They do their mission trip here and there, and because they mix it up. There ain't nothing wrong with doing that, but there ain't nothing wrong with having, if He's leading you to be in one place, to stay in one place. It's all about following where He's leading you. For which cause both you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron, that you murmur against him? See, they were getting a bitterness against Aaron at this point. Moses and Aaron. They were getting, because they had what they wanted. Oftentimes when we get mad, it's at people. Even though God was the one that made it this way. They couldn't really do anything against God because He's all-powerful, but they could sure do things to Aaron and Moses and make their lives miserable and talk bad about them. They wouldn't have dared do that against God, but they could do that against God's chosen. And we see in the book of 1 Samuel that David's appointed king, and we see how at the end of it when Saul dies, that the man comes to him and bragging about Saul's death to David and thinking David's being happy, but David recognizes the Lord appointed Saul. It wasn't for anybody to take that away from him. So he has the man killed. We should accept those in position because God allowed them to be there. God put them there. Even if they're not good. You see, with King Nebuchadnezzar, probably because he's pagan, he wasn't a righteous king. He may have made good decisions military-wise and other things, but they accepted what God put them to. They didn't there was some that didn't let their faith fall. They stayed strong and the Lord brought them out of it. The Lord took care of the evil. And then again you see the northern kingdom that goes in exile and keeps falling further away. And they completely fell out of fellowship. And Moses sent to call Doath and Abiram, sons of Elam, which said, "We will not come up." Now, the reason why they might have not come up may have been a few reasons. They may have not had respect for Moses because there's people questioning his authority at this time. They might have not come up because they feared what God was going to do with them and knew that they were in trouble. It's kind of like how Adam and Eve hid in the garden. That could have been one of the reasons why they didn't come up. Or they might have not come up because they were just going to go do their own thing in complete act of rebellion. They knew Moses was in authority. They were going to create their own authority. So this is one of the three possibilities. In the end of the chapter, the Lord deals with them. We won't get there today, though. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land that flows with milk and honey? Now this is referring to the land of Egypt. There's something wrong with their view, and I'll explain that after in this verse. To kill us in the wilderness unless you make yourself altogether a prince over us. Now, Moses never put himself in charge. You should go back to chapter 3 of Exodus. Moses didn't want to be in charge. Moses didn't consider himself a leader. But God found that in him. And God called him to do what he did. And in Egypt had what they need. But in Egypt they were in bondage. At best, they were hired workers who weren't getting paid very well. At best. When you read some of the stories, they may have actually got paid a little bit, but their taxes may have been more than what they got paid. Top idea. They couldn't get past what they came from to where God was going to take them. Our past can be a big obstacle for us, just as other people in authority. These two things are the main problems with the core of what they had. They couldn't get past what they were, where they were, and they couldn't accept that they weren't what they wanted to be. We see the story of Lot, how they didn't want to leave. They were in an awful place, very sinful, but they didn't sin enough to take God's advice when He sent them angels to get out. They literally had to drag Lot out of the city. Moreover, you have not brought us into the land that flows with milk and honey, or given us inheritance of the fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men, we will come up. So they were concerned because they're in the wilderness. At this point in time, they were only supposed to be in the wilderness long enough to receive God's laws, long enough for God to hand out who's getting what land, and then prepare, and then they were supposed to go until their lack of faith. Oftentimes our lack of faith keeps us from doing what God wants us to. We don't put it in Him, we put it in other things, and we can't get there. God's plan originally wasn't for them to be in this wilderness long, because their focus was on their past, the might of them men in the land. They never made it there. Their distractions kept them from, they were distracted and didn't see what God wanted from them. And Moses was very angry and said unto the Lord, Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, neither have I hurt one of them. And Moses said to Korah, You and all your company be before the Lord, you and they and Aaron tomorrow. Sometimes God may want us to test authority. Sometimes. But we need to go to prayer with Him before that. We see that not all authority is good. Sometimes He puts it in a place just to strengthen us. We see that in Babylon, the authority told Daniel not to pray. There was no doubt in Daniel's mind he wasn't to listen to authority there. He had a higher authority he needed to listen to. There's sometimes that it's easy like that, and then certain times it's a little harder. Prayer lets us know. At this time, maybe Moses thought the changing of the guard may have been happening. Moses may have thought that this next group would take up after him and be leaders of Israel. It would turn out to be Joshua. But sometimes God prepares the next generation sooner. But all this can be sorted out with prayer. Moses had the right to be angry. Aaron had the right to be angry. They took their problem to the Lord instead of just doing what they wanted to, like the sons of Korah were. The difference between the way Moses and Aaron reacted is they prayed about it. They let the Lord deal with it. Sons of Korah were going to do whatever they needed to get what they wanted, in spite of what the Lord wanted from them.